Jamal Washington sat at his desk, his fingers moving quickly as he solved complex math problems. He was only 6 years old, but the math workbook in front of him was meant for 8th graders. His mother, Letitia, watched from the doorway of their small Detroit apartment, amazed and proud. "Jamal, dinner's ready," she called softly, not wanting to break his concentration. Jamal looked up and smiled. "Just one more problem, Mom." Letitia nodded and went back to the kitchen where her husband Darnell was setting the table. "He's doing those high school math problems again," she told him. "I don't even understand what he's working on anymore." Darnell shook his head in wonder. "My boss gave me some extra shifts next week. We can buy those science books he's been asking for." The Washingtons weren't rich. Darnell worked at an auto factory, and Letitia cleaned offices at night. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where sirens were as common as bird songs. But they recognized their son's gift early and did everything they could to support it. Jamal joined them at the table, his mind still half focused on equations. At school, his teachers didn't know what to do with him. He finished his work in minutes and then sat bored while other kids struggled. His 2nd grade teacher, Ms. Phillips, started bringing him work from higher grades, but even that wasn't enough. "We can't keep up with him," Ms. Phillips told the Washingtons during a parent-teacher meeting. "He needs more than we can give him here." By age 10, Jamal had taught himself algebra, geometry, and was starting calculus using library books and free online courses. The local public school system wasn't equipped for a student like him. His parents looked into private schools, but the tuition costs were impossible on their income. Then came the math competition. Jamal's science teacher, Mr. Baker, encouraged him to enter the state youth mathematics tournament. "You'll be competing against kids much older than you," he warned, "but I think you can do well." The day of the competition, Jamal walked into the large auditorium at Michigan State University and felt eyes on him immediately. He was by far the youngest participant. Most competitors were high school students, some already looking like adults, with their height and confident manners. "Is he lost?" one teenager asked loudly as Jamal passed. Another laughed. "Maybe he's someone's little brother." Jamal kept his eyes down and found his assigned seat. The problems were difficult, covering topics he had only recently taught himself. But he worked through them methodically, his pencil moving steadily across the paper. When the time ended, he wasn't sure how he had done, but he felt good about his solutions. 2 weeks later, Mr. Baker burst into Jamal's classroom with a huge smile. He won. Jamal won the state competition. The news spread quickly. A local newspaper ran a small story about the math prodigy from Detroit. Then a national education blog picked it up. Suddenly, Jamal's photo and story were being shared across the country. One evening, the Washingtons received a phone call that would change everything. "This is Dr. Elizabeth Bennett from Westbrook Academy," said the crisp voice on the phone. "I'm calling about your son, Jamal." Westbrook Academy was one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. Located on a beautiful campus just outside Boston, it educated the children of politicians, business leaders, and old money families. Its graduates went on to Ivy League universities almost without exception. "We've been following Jamal's achievements," Dr. Bennett continued. "We would like to offer him a full scholarship to attend Westbrook starting next fall." Letitia nearly dropped the phone. A full scholarship would cover the $60,000 annual tuition, room and board, and even books and supplies. It was an opportunity beyond their wildest dreams, but it also meant sending their 12-year-old son hundreds of miles away to a world completely different from everything he knew. "We need to think about it," Darnell said after a long family discussion. "Jamal would be so far from home in a place where most kids come from very different backgrounds." Jamal sat quietly, looking at brochures showing Westbrook's state-of-the-art science labs, extensive library, and beautiful campus. "I want to go," he said finally. "I want to learn everything I can." They visited the school before making their decision. The campus looked like something from a movie, with ivy-covered brick buildings, manicured lawns, and students in crisp uniforms. Jamal's eyes grew wide at the sight of the science building with its modern laboratories. Dr. Bennett showed them around personally. Jamal would be our youngest student in recent history, she explained, but we believe he's ready for our curriculum. We can create a special academic plan for him. As they toured the campus, Jamal noticed that almost all the students were white. He saw only 2 black students among the hundreds walking between classes. Will there be other kids like me? He asked quietly. Dr. Bennett smiled. We're working to increase diversity at Westbrook. You would be joining 6 other African American students currently enrolled. 6 out of over 400 students. The number hung in the air. Later, in their hotel room, the Washingtons talked long into the night. He'll get an education we could never give him otherwise, Darnell said. But he'll be so alone, Letitia worried. And those kids, they come from such different worlds. I can handle it, Jamal insisted. I've always been different anyway. In the end, they decided to accept. The opportunity was too important to pass up. Jamal would start at Westbrook in the fall. The summer passed quickly. Jamal studied advanced material to prepare, while his parents saved extra money for things the scholarship didn't cover. Letitia took him shopping for new clothes, trying to match what they'd seen students wearing at Westbrook. You don't need to be exactly like them, she told him as he tried on a sweater that cost more than their weekly grocery bill. Just be yourself. The day came for Jamal to leave. His parents drove him to the airport, the car unusually quiet. Call us every day, Letitia said, hugging him tightly at the security gate. And if anything happens, anything at all that makes you uncomfortable, you tell us right away. Darnell hugged him next, slipping an envelope into his hand. A little extra spending money, he whispered. And this. He pressed something small and metal into Jamal's palm. It was a keychain with a tiny model of the Detroit skyline. So you remember where you come from? Darnell said, his voice rough with emotion. Jamal nodded, unable to speak. Then he turned and walked through security, not looking back because he knew he might cry if he did. A school representative met him in Boston and drove him to campus. When they arrived, students were everywhere, returning for the fall semester, greeting friends, carrying luggage to dorms. Jamal felt suddenly very small and very young. The representative led him to Maple Hall, a freshman dormitory. Your roommate is Bradley Collins, she explained. He's a new student too, but he's 14. Bradley wasn't in the room when Jamal arrived. The room was larger than Jamal's bedroom at home, with 2 beds, 2 desks, and 2 dressers. One side was already cluttered with belongings. Expensive-looking clothes, a laptop, sports equipment, and framed family photos, showing a blonde boy with smiling parents on a beach, on a ski slope, on a boat. Jamal unpacked his things, arranging his books carefully on his desk. He placed the Detroit keychain next to his lamp and sat on his bed, waiting for his roommate and wondering what life at Westbrook would be like. He didn't have to wait long to find out. The door opened, and a tall blonde boy walked in, followed by a couple who were clearly his parents. They all stopped short when they saw Jamal. Oh, said the woman, recovering quickly. You must be Bradley's roommate. Bradley stared at Jamal. You're so young, he said finally. How old are you? 12, Jamal answered. I'm Jamal Washington. 12, Bradley's father repeated, raising his eyebrows. That's unusual. The atmosphere in the room felt suddenly tense. Jamal stood up and extended his hand like his father had taught him. Nice to meet you all. Bradley shook his hand briefly. His parents did the same, their smiles not reaching their eyes. Well, Bradley's mother said brightly, we should finish unpacking. Bradley has tennis orientation in an hour. Jamal nodded and sat back down on his bed, opening a book but not really reading it. He could feel them glancing at him, hear them whispering. The familiar feeling of being an outsider settled over him, but he pushed it away. He was here to learn, to make his parents proud, to build a future. Nothing else mattered. Jamal opened his notebook and began writing down goals for his first semester at Westbrook Academy, unaware of just how challenging that future would be. Classes at Westbrook Academy began the next day. Jamal woke up early, carefully put on his new uniform and checked his schedule. His first class was advanced physics, a course usually taken by juniors and seniors. The school had placed him in several upper-level classes based on tests he had taken over the summer. When he arrived at the classroom, Jamal felt all eyes turned to him. He was at least 2 years younger than even the youngest student there. He found an empty seat in the back and sat down quietly. "Are you lost, kid?" asked a tall boy with perfectly styled brown hair. "No, I'm in this class," Jamal replied. The boy raised his eyebrows and exchanged looks with his friends. "Right. Of course you are." The teacher, Dr. Patricia Morgan, entered the room. She was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp eyes behind round glasses. She started taking attendance, and when she called Jamal Washington, several students turned to stare at him again. "Ah, Mr. Washington," Dr. Morgan said, looking at him with interest. "Our new scholarship student. I've heard impressive things about you." Jamal nodded politely, wishing she hadn't drawn attention to him or mentioned the scholarship. Now everyone knew he wasn't from a wealthy family like most students. Dr. Morgan began her lecture on quantum mechanics. Jamal listened intently, taking detailed notes. The material was challenging, but he had read about it in books from the public library. When Dr. Morgan asked a difficult question about wave functions, no one raised their hand. After a moment, Jamal slowly raised his. "Mr. Washington," Dr. Morgan said, looking pleased. Jamal explained the concept clearly. Dr. Morgan nodded with approval. "Excellent explanation. It seems you've done some reading on your own." A few students looked at Jamal with surprise. Others frowned. As they left class, Jamal heard someone mutter, "Probably just memorized that from a book." The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. In advanced calculus, Jamal solved a problem on the board faster than anyone else. In English literature, he asked thoughtful questions about Shakespeare that made the teacher beam. By lunchtime, he had gained a reputation among the students and teachers. But that reputation wasn't entirely positive. When Jamal entered the dining hall carrying his tray, he looked for a place to sit. The large room was filled with tables of students talking and laughing. As he approached one table with empty seats, the students there quickly put their bags on the open chairs. This happened at 3 different tables until Jamal finally found a spot at the end of a table where a girl with glasses was sitting alone. "Can I sit here?" he asked. The girl looked up from her book and shrugged. "Free country." Jamal sat down. "I'm Jamal." "Zoe," she replied, not looking up from her book. "You're the genius kid everyone's talking about." Jamal shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just good at some subjects." Zoe finally looked at him. "That's not what I heard. I heard you corrected Mr. Stevens in calculus." "I didn't correct him," Jamal explained. "I just showed another way to solve the problem." Zoe almost smiled. "Same thing. Stevens doesn't like being shown up, especially by a freshman." She returned to her book. "By the way, watch out for Cameron Porter and his friends. They don't like scholarship kids who make them look bad." Jamal soon learned that Cameron Porter was the tall boy from physics class. His father was Oliver Porter, a major donor to Westbrook whose name was on the science building. Cameron and his group of friends seemed to be at the top of the social hierarchy at Westbrook. When Jamal returned to his room that afternoon, he found Bradley packing some of his things. "What are you doing?" Jamal asked. Bradley didn't look at him. "I requested a room change." "Why?" Jamal asked, though he already knew the answer. Bradley continued packing. "No offense, but we don't have much in common. I think I'd be better off with someone more similar to me." Jamal felt a sting of rejection, but just nodded. "Okay." After Bradley left, Jamal called his parents. He didn't tell them about the room change or how he'd been treated at lunch. Instead, he talked about his classes and how Dr. Morgan had praised his work. "We're so proud of you," his mother said. "Are you making friends?" "It takes time," Jamal replied. "Everyone's still getting to know each other." That night, alone in his room, Jamal read ahead in his physics textbook until he fell asleep. The next few weeks established a pattern. Jamal excelled in all his classes. earning the respect of his teachers but the resentment of many students. He ate lunch with Zoe when she was there, but she often skipped meals to work in the art studio. He had no roommate, and no one seemed in a hurry to assign him a new one. One day after physics class, Dr. Morgan asked him to stay behind. "Jamal, I've been observing your work," she said. "You're far beyond the material we're covering in class." Jamal looked down modestly. "I just read a lot. It's more than that. You have a natural intuition for physics that's rare even among graduate students." She pulled a paper from her desk. "I'd like to offer you the chance to do independent research under my guidance. Have you heard of the inconsistencies between quantum mechanics and general relativity?" Jamal's eyes lit up. "Yes, it's one of the biggest unsolved problems in physics." Dr. Morgan smiled. "I think you might have some fresh insights. Would you be interested in working on a research project?" For the first time since arriving at Westbrook, Jamal felt truly excited. Yes, absolutely. Dr. Morgan gave him access to the physics lab in the evenings. Jamal began spending all his free time there, working on theoretical models and running computer simulations. The lab became his sanctuary, a place where he could focus on science and forget about feeling like an outsider. His research progressed quickly. Dr. Morgan was amazed by his ideas and encouraged him to write them up for the National Young Scientists competition. "Your approach is innovative," she told him. "You're looking at the problem from an angle most physicists haven't considered." Jamal worked day and night on his paper. He missed meals and stayed up late, driven by the thrill of discovery. When he finally submitted his work to the competition, Dr. Morgan read it and said it was graduate-level research. A month later, Jamal received news that his paper had won first place in the National Young Scientists Award. It was a prestigious honor that came with a cash prize and publication in a scientific journal. Dr. Morgan was ecstatic. "This is extraordinary, Jamal. Your work could lead to significant advances in theoretical physics." The school's headmaster, Dr. William Hayes, called Jamal to his office to congratulate him. "Your achievement brings great honor to Westbrook," he said. "We'll announce it at next week's assembly." Word of Jamal's award spread quickly through the school. While some teachers offered congratulations, many students were skeptical. "There's no way he did that research by himself," Cameron Porter said loudly in the dining hall. "Morgan probably did most of the work," another student added. "Or he copied it from somewhere. They're just giving him special treatment because of diversity goals." Jamal heard these comments but tried to ignore them. He focused instead on the proud voices of his parents when he called to tell them the news. "You're changing your life with your brain, son," his father said. "That's what we always hoped for you." The night before the school assembly, Jamal was working late in the physics lab when Cameron Porter and two of his friends walked in. Jamal was surprised. They weren't physics students and never came to the lab. "So this is where the genius works," Cameron said, looking around. "Pretty fancy equipment for a kid from Detroit." Jamal said nothing, continuing to type on his computer. Cameron picked up some papers from Jamal's desk. "What's this, your famous research?" "Please put those down," Jamal said quietly. Cameron flipped through the pages. "Lots of complicated formulas here. Did you really understand all this, or did someone help you write it?" "I wrote it myself," Jamal said, standing up. "Please put my papers down." Cameron dropped the papers on the floor. "Oops, sorry about that." As Jamal bent to pick them up, Cameron whispered to his friends, "The scholarship kid needs to learn his place." They left, laughing. Jamal gathered his papers, his hands shaking slightly. He had faced bullies before, but something about Cameron's tone worried him. He didn't know it then, but Cameron Porter was about to change the course of his life at Westbrook Academy. The next morning, Jamal woke up to loud knocking on his door. He opened it to find Mr. Bennett, the dorm supervisor, standing there with a serious expression. "Jamal, you need to come with me to Dean Harmon's office right away," Mr. Bennett said. "Now? But I have class in 20 minutes, Jamal replied, confused. "This is more important, the dean is waiting." Jamal quickly got dressed and followed Mr. Bennett across campus. Students were heading to their morning classes, many staring as he walked past with the dorm supervisor. Dean Richard Harmon's office was in the main administration building. It was a large room with dark wood furniture and walls lined with books. Dean Harmon sat behind a massive desk, and next to him stood Dr. Hayes, the headmaster. Cameron Porter and 2 other students sat in chairs facing the desk. "Mr. Washington, please sit down," Dean Harmon said, pointing to an empty chair away from the other students. Jamal sat, his heart beating faster. "What's this about?" Dean Harmon looked at him sternly. "We're addressing a very serious matter. Last night, someone broke into Mr. Stevens's office and stole copies of the advanced mathematics midterm exam. This morning, we found evidence that the answers were being sold to students." Jamal's eyes widened. "What does that have to do with me?" Cameron Porter spoke up. "Just tell the truth, Washington. Everyone knows you did it." "Did what?" Jamal asked, genuinely confused. Dean Harmon held up a piece of paper. "This is a list of students who bought the exam answers. Your name was given to us as the seller." Jamal stood up, shocked. "That's not true. I would never cheat or help others cheat." "Sit down, Mr. Washington," Dean Harmon ordered. "Mr. Porter and these other students have all stated that you approached them offering to sell the exam answers. They're lying." Jamal looked at Cameron, who stared back with a small smile on his face. "Why would I need to steal exam answers? I have the highest grade in advanced mathematics." Dr. Hayes spoke for the first time. "We conducted a search of your room this morning as allowed by school policy during investigations. We found this." He placed a folder on the desk. Inside were handwritten answers to what looked like test questions. Jamal stared at the folder. "That's not mine. I've never seen that before." "It was found in your desk drawer," Dean Harmon said. "Someone must have put it there," Jamal insisted. "I was working in the physics lab until late last night. Check with Dr. Morgan. Anyone could have entered my room." Dean Harmon made a note. "We'll speak with Dr. Morgan. In the meantime, you are suspended from classes pending the disciplinary committee's decision." "But my midterms start tomorrow," Jamal protested. "You should have thought of that before engaging in academic dishonesty," Dean Harmon replied coldly. Jamal looked at Cameron again. The other boy's face showed no emotion now, but Jamal suddenly understood what had happened. The visit to the lab last night, the papers Cameron had handled, it was all part of a plan. Back in his room, Jamal immediately called his parents. His father answered. "Dad, something terrible has happened," Jamal said, his voice shaking. "They're accusing me of stealing test answers and selling them to other students." "What? That's ridiculous," Darnell exclaimed. Jamal explained everything. Cameron's visit to the lab, the meeting with the dean, the folder found in his room. "This boy Cameron is setting you up," his father said angrily. "We need to come there right away." "The disciplinary hearing is tomorrow," Jamal said. "Can you make it?" "We'll find a way," his father promised. "Don't worry, son, we'll sort this out." After hanging up, Jamal went to find Dr. Morgan. He found her in the physics lab reviewing student papers. "Dr. Morgan, I need your help," he said urgently and explained the situation. Dr. Morgan looked deeply concerned. "This is absurd. You're the last person who would need to cheat. They found exam answers in my room, but someone must have planted them there," Jamal said. "I was here in the lab last night when Cameron Porter came in. He was acting strange, looking at my papers." Dr. Morgan nodded. "I'll speak to Dean Harmon and the disciplinary committee. I know your character, Jamal. We'll get this straightened out." But Jamal wasn't so sure. He had seen the look on Dean Harmon's face. The dean had already decided he was guilty. That evening, Jamal couldn't sleep. He paced his room, thinking about the hearing the next day. His parents would have to miss work and spend money they didn't have to travel to Boston. All because Cameron Porter had decided to frame him. The disciplinary hearing was held in a small conference room. 5 people sat at a long table. Dean Harmon, Dr. Hayes, Mr. Stevens, the math teacher whose exam had been stolen, and 2 other teachers Jamal didn't. And oh well. His parents sat beside him, his mother holding his hand tightly. "The purpose of this hearing is to determine whether Jamal Washington violated the Westbrook Honor Code by stealing and selling examination materials," Dean Harmon began. One by one, Cameron and his friends testified that Jamal had approached them offering to sell the math exam answers. They claimed they had refused, but that other students had bought them. When asked for names of these other students, however, they became vague. "I don't want to get anyone in trouble," Cameron said with fake concern. Mr. Stevens testified next. "The exam copy was secured in my office. Only someone with advanced lockpicking skills or a stolen key could have accessed it." When it was Jamal's turn to speak, he denied everything. "I have never stolen anything. I have never cheated. I was in the physics lab working on my research when Cameron claims I was selling exam answers." Dr. Morgan confirmed that Jamal had been in the lab. "He was there from 7 until at least 10:30. I checked on him before I left. That still leaves time for him to have approached students later in the evening," Dean Harmon pointed out. Jamal's father spoke up. "My son has never been in trouble. He has a perfect academic record. Why would he risk everything to sell exam answers? Perhaps to make money," suggested one of the teachers Jamal didn't know. "Scholarship students often struggle with the financial disparity at Westbrook." Letitia Washington's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you suggesting my son is a thief because we're not wealthy?" The room fell silent. Dean Harmon cleared his throat. "No one is making assumptions based on financial status, Mrs. Washington. We're simply exploring motives." The hearing continued for another hour. At the end, the committee asked everyone to leave while they deliberated. Jamal and his parents waited in the hallway, not speaking. Dr. Morgan waited with them, her face tight with worry. After 45 minutes, they were called back in. Jamal could tell from Dean Harmon's expression that the news wasn't good. After careful consideration of the evidence, the committee has determined that Jamal Washington violated the Westbrook Honor Code by stealing and distributing examination materials, Dean Harmon announced. "The penalty for such a serious breach is expulsion." "No," Letitia cried. "This is wrong." Darnell put his arm around his wife. "What evidence?" he demanded. "You have the word of these other boys against my sons, and the exam answers found in his room," Dean Harmon replied. "Which anyone could have put there," Dr. Morgan interjected. "This decision is a travesty. Jamal is the most brilliant student I've ever taught." Dean Harmon's expression hardened. "The decision is final. Jamal will have until tomorrow to pack his belongings and leave campus." Jamal sat in shock. This couldn't be happening. All his dreams, his hard work, his future gone because of a lie. "What about my scholarship?" he asked quietly. "Terminated, of course," Dean Harmon said. "Scholarship students are held to the highest standards." Dr. Morgan stood up angrily. "This is absolutely unacceptable. I will be filing a formal protest with the Board of Trustees." But Jamal knew it wouldn't matter. Cameron Porter's father was on the Board of Trustees. The Washingtons couldn't afford lawyers to fight the school's decision. His word against Cameron's would never be enough. That night, as he packed his things, Jamal held the small Detroit keychain his father had given him. He had come so far, only to be sent back in disgrace. He put the keychain in his pocket and continued packing, tears silently falling down his face. Tomorrow, he would leave Westbrook Academy, his reputation destroyed, his future uncertain. What he didn't know was that this terrible ending would lead to an unexpected new beginning. The drive back to Detroit was long and quiet. Jamal sat in the back seat of his parents' old car, watching the scenery change from the manicured lawns of New England to the familiar urban landscape of Michigan. His mother had cried for the first hour, while his father had gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "It's not fair," Letitia said for the 10th time. "They didn't even give you a proper chance to defend yourself." "Rich kids stick together," Darnell muttered. "That Porter boy's father probably has the school in his pocket." Jamal said nothing. The pain and humiliation were too fresh. He had been publicly expelled for cheating, something he had never done and never would do. His perfect record was now stained. His dreams felt shattered. When they arrived home, their small apartment felt both familiar and strange. Jamal's room was exactly as he had left it months ago, but it seemed smaller now. the posters of famous scientists and space missions childish compared to the sophisticated world of Westbrook. For days, Jamal barely left his room. He ignored calls from Dr. Morgan, who had promised to fight for him. What was the point? The decision had been made. He was back in Detroit, his future uncertain. After a week of watching her son sink deeper into depression, Letitia had enough. She marched into his room one morning and pulled open the curtains, letting sunlight stream in. "Get up," she said firmly. "This isn't over unless you decide it's over." Jamal looked at her wearily. "What am I supposed to do now? Go back to public school where they don't even have advanced physics? Westbrook was my chance to get into a good college." "Since when do you need a fancy school to learn?" Letitia demanded. "You were teaching yourself calculus from library books when you were 10. You're still the same brilliant boy you were before Westbrook." Jamal sat up slowly. His mother was right. He had always found ways to learn, even with limited resources. That afternoon, a visitor arrived at their apartment. It was Alicia Rodriguez, a professor from the local community college and a friend of the Washington family. She had tutored Jamal in Spanish before he left for Westbrook. "I heard what happened," she said, sitting at their kitchen table. "It's disgraceful how they treated you." Jamal shrugged, still feeling the sting of injustice. "But I'm not here to dwell on that," Alicia continued. "I'm here to talk about what's next. You're too talented to waste time feeling sorry for yourself." She laid out a plan. Jamal could take the GED test to earn his high school equivalency diploma. Meanwhile, he could audit advanced classes at the community college where Alicia taught. She would help him continue his education and prepare for college applications. "Most importantly," she said, "you should continue your research. Dr. Morgan called me. She believes in you, Jamal. She says your work on quantum field theory is groundbreaking." For the first time since leaving Westbrook, Jamal felt a spark of hope. "She really said that?" Alicia nodded. "She's furious about what happened. She's resigned from Westbrook in protest." Jamal was stunned. "Dr. Morgan resigned? Because of me?" "Because of the injustice," Alicia corrected. "She couldn't work for an institution that would treat a student so unfairly. She's accepted a position at MIT and wants to stay in touch about your research." 2 weeks later, Jamal was deep into a new routine. Mornings were spent studying for the GED. Afternoons, he attended physics and mathematics classes at the community college, where the professors were amazed by his knowledge. Evenings, he worked on his research, exchanging emails with Dr. Morgan about his progress. One night, while working on a particularly difficult calculation, Jamal received an email from Dr. Morgan with an unexpected suggestion. "Jamal, I've shared your research with my colleague, Dr. Nathan Ellis at Harvard. He's intrigued by your approach to reconciling quantum field theory with gravitational principles. Would you be willing to speak with him?" Jamal couldn't believe it. "Harvard," he replied immediately, and the next day he had a video call with Dr. Ellis, a renowned physicist whose books Jamal had read. "Your work shows remarkable insight," Dr. Ellis told him. "Dr. Morgan tells me you're only 17? "Yes, sir," Jamal replied. "Extraordinary. I'd like to propose something unusual. Harvard has a special entrance examination for exceptional cases. It's rarely used, but in situations where traditional educational paths don't reflect a student's true abilities, we can consider direct admission based on demonstrated excellence." Jamal's heart raced. "You mean I could apply to Harvard?" "I'm suggesting you take the examination. If you perform as well as I expect, we might be able to offer you early admission to our physics program." 2 months after being expelled from Westbrook, Jamal traveled to Boston again, this time to take Harvard's special entrance examination. The test lasted 8 hours and covered advanced physics, mathematics, and general knowledge. It was the most challenging test he had ever taken, but Jamal felt prepared. As he worked through complex problems and essay questions, he thought about Cameron Porter and Dean Harmon. Their attempt to destroy his future had actually set him on a new path, one that might take him further than Westbrook ever could. While waiting for the results, Jamal received unexpected news from Zoe, his lunch companion from Westbrook. She Had found his email address through Dr. Morgan. Thought you should know, her message read. The truth came out. A junior named Eric Kim confessed that he was the one who stole the exam and that Cameron paid him to plant the answers in your room. Cameron's friends eventually admitted they lied about you selling answers. There's a big scandal here now, but of course, nothing happened to Cameron because of his father. Some students are protesting the way you were treated. Dr. Hayes is making speeches about reviewing disciplinary procedures, but it's all talk. Miss your brain at our lunch table. Good luck wherever you are. Jamal read the message 3 times. The vindication was bittersweet. His name was cleared, but too late to matter at Westbrook. Still, knowing the truth had come out gave him a sense of peace. 3 weeks after taking the Harvard examination, Jamal received a phone call from Dr. Ellis. Jamal, I have extraordinary news. You achieved the highest score on our entrance examination in the program's history. Jamal gripped the phone tightly, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. We would like to offer you admission to Harvard's physics program with a full scholarship, beginning next semester. Normally, we would require you to complete undergraduate studies first, but your examination results and research work demonstrate that you're already performing at a graduate level in physics. When Jamal told his parents the news, they stared at him in disbelief before breaking into tears and laughter, hugging him and each other. From expelled to Harvard in 3 months, his father said, shaking his head in wonder. That's my boy. Jamal thought about how differently things had turned out from what he had planned. Being expelled from Westbrook had felt like the end of his dreams. Instead, it had forced him to forge his own path, one that led to an even greater opportunity. A week later, Jamal received an official letter from Harvard, confirming his admission and scholarship. As he held the heavy cream-colored envelope with Harvard's crimson seal, he remembered something Dr. Morgan had once told him. True genius cannot be suppressed. It always finds a way to shine. She had been right. His light had not been extinguished by Westbrook's injustice. It was about to shine even brighter at Harvard, where he would have the chance to transform theoretical physics and perhaps return to Westbrook one day, not as a student, but as something much more. 8 months after being expelled from Westbrook Academy, Jamal Washington stood in front of his mirror in his Harvard dormitory, adjusting his tie. Today was no ordinary day. He was about to present his research at the International Physics Symposium being hosted by Harvard University. The symposium attracted top physicists from around the world. Researchers, professors, and students would gather to share groundbreaking work in the field. Jamal's presentation on reconciling quantum field theory with gravitational principles had been selected as one of the featured talks, an extraordinary honor for someone so young. Dr. Ellis knocked on his open door. Ready for the big day, Jamal? Jamal took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Nervous? Dr. Ellis asked with a kind smile. A little, Jamal admitted. There will be Nobel Prize winners in the audience. Who will be very impressed by your work, Dr. Ellis assured him. Just remember you earned your place here. Your research stands on its own merits. Jamal nodded, thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. His first semester at Harvard had been challenging but exhilarating. The physics department had welcomed him warmly, and for the first time, he felt his intellect was truly respected. No one questioned whether he belonged or deserved to be there. Dr. Ellis checked his watch. We should head over. The auditorium is already filling up. As they walked across Harvard's historic campus, Jamal thought about his parents, who had arrived last night for his presentation. Their pride was almost overwhelming. His father had taken 2 days off work, something he rarely did, and his mother had bought a new dress for the occasion. The symposium was being held in a grand auditorium with wood-paneled walls and plush, red seats. When Jamal and Dr. Ellis arrived backstage, they could see through a gap in the curtains that the hall was nearly full. Scanning the crowd, Jamal suddenly froze. In the 3rd row, he spotted familiar faces. Dean Harmon was there along with Dr. Hayes and several other Westbrook faculty members. They had come with a group of senior students for the symposium, not knowing Jamal would be presenting. Dr. Ellis, Jamal whispered, pointing them out. Those people are from Westbrook Academy. Dr. Ellis frowned. The school that expelled you? Interesting coincidence. Their senior physics students often attend the symposium. He studied Jamal's face. Will this be a problem? Jamal thought for a moment, then shook his head. No. Actually, it's perfect. The symposium began with opening remarks from Harvard's president, followed by the first few presentations. Jamal waited backstage, reviewing his notes one last time. When it was finally his turn, Dr. Ellis gave his shoulder a supportive squeeze. Now, I am pleased to introduce one of Harvard's most remarkable young researchers, the moderator announced. Though only 17 years old, he has already made significant contributions to theoretical physics. Please welcome Jamal Washington. Jamal walked onto the stage confidently. As he looked out at the audience, he saw Dean Harmon's expression change from polite interest to shock. Dr. Hayes's mouth actually fell open. The Westbrook students whispered to each other, pointing at him. Thank you, Jamal began. I'm honored to present my research on reconciling quantum field theory with gravitational principles. For the next 20 minutes, Jamal explained his theoretical framework with clarity and precision. He used slides showing complex equations and models, explaining how his approach might help solve one of physics' greatest challenges. The audience listened intently, many taking notes. When he finished his presentation, there was a moment of silence, followed by enthusiastic applause. Several physicists stood up, giving him a standing ovation. Dr. Stephen Kaplan, a Nobel laureate, was the first to ask a question during the discussion period. Mr. Washington, your approach is remarkably innovative, Dr. Kaplan said. How did you first conceive of using this mathematical framework to address the quantum gravity problem? Jamal answered thoughtfully, engaging with Dr. Kaplan and other distinguished physicists who asked questions. Throughout the discussion, he could see the Westbrook contingent sitting in stunned silence. After the symposium session ended, many people came up to congratulate Jamal. His parents hugged him tightly, his mother wiping tears from her eyes. You were amazing, son, his father said. I didn't understand half of what you said, but I could tell everyone else was impressed. Dr. Ellis approached with a tall, distinguished-looking man. Jamal, I'd like you to meet Dr. Stephen Kaplan. Jamal shook hands with the Nobel laureate, trying to contain his excitement. Extraordinary work, young man, Dr. Kaplan said. The most promising framework by a young physicist I've seen in decades. I'd like to discuss possible collaboration with my research team at MIT. As Jamal spoke with Dr. Kaplan, he noticed Dean Harmon hovering nearby, clearly wanting to approach but hesitating. Finally, as Dr. Kaplan moved away, Dean Harmon stepped forward. Mr. Washington, he said stiffly. That was quite a presentation. Jamal looked him directly in the eyes. Thank you, Dean Harmon. I was unaware that you were at Harvard, Dean Harmon continued, clearly uncomfortable. Yes, I was admitted with a full scholarship shortly after leaving Westbrook, Jamal said calmly. Dr. Hayes joined them, looking equally uncomfortable. We were just saying what an impressive presentation that was. Dr. Ellis, who had been watching this interaction, stepped forward. Gentlemen, are you colleagues of Jamal's? We're from Westbrook Academy, Dean Harmon explained. Jamal was a student there before I was wrongfully expelled, Jamal finished for him. For cheating I didn't commit. Dean Harmon's face flushed. Yes, well, there have been some developments regarding that situation. I know, Jamal said. Cameron Porter's scheme was exposed, but it was too late for me at Westbrook. Dr. Ellis looked between them with sudden understanding. Ah, so you're from the institution that expelled this brilliant young scientist based on false accusations. Interesting. Did you know that Jamal achieved the highest score in the history of Harvard's physics entrance examination? Dean Harmon looked even more uncomfortable. We've been reviewing our disciplinary procedures since then. I should hope so, Dr. Ellis said coldly. Your loss has certainly been Harvard's gain. At that moment, a reporter from a scientific journal approached. Jamal Washington, I'd love to interview you about your research and your journey to Harvard at such a young age. Jamal agreed to the interview. As the reporter took notes, Jamal shared his story, including his unfair expulsion from Westbrook. The reporter seemed particularly interested in this aspect. "So you were expelled from an elite private school for something you didn't do, and months later you're presenting groundbreaking research at Harvard?" the reporter asked. "That's correct," Jamal said. "Sometimes, setbacks can lead to unexpected opportunities." The reporter's article was published the following week in a prominent scientific journal. It not only highlighted Jamal's research, but also detailed the injustice he had faced at Westbrook. Other publications picked up the story, and soon it gained national attention. The publicity forced Westbrook Academy to launch an official investigation into its disciplinary practices. The investigation revealed a pattern of harsher punishments for minority students and preferential treatment for children of wealthy donors. Dean Harmon was asked to resign, and the school issued a formal apology to Jamal, offering to reinstate him with full honors. Jamal declined the offer. He was thriving at Harvard, his research was gaining recognition, and he had found a community that valued him for his mind rather than judging him for his background. 2 years later, Jamal published his first major paper in the Journal of Theoretical Physics. At 19, he became one of the youngest recipients of the prestigious Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics. The award came with a $3 million prize. With part of the money, Jamal established a foundation to support gifted minority students in STEM fields. The foundation provided scholarships, mentoring, and legal support to ensure that talent would not be suppressed by prejudice or institutional barriers. In interviews, Jamal often reflected on his journey. "Being expelled from Westbrook felt like the end of the world at the time," he would say, "but it forced me to find my own path and taught me that true intelligence cannot be denied. It will always find a way to shine." The story of the black genius expelled from an elite school only to shock them with his success at Harvard became an inspiration to young scientists across the country. It reminded them that setbacks, even unfair ones, did not define their potential. As Jamal often told the students in his foundation, "Your mind is the most powerful tool you have. No one can take that away from you."